Hi everyone, this is a mailbag week this week, and I got a couple of packages, plus a really good one that I have been waiting to get into for a couple of weeks now. So I think I'll do this big one last, and maybe start, I think I'll start with this one. It actually might be fairly boring. Okay, so this is the remainder of my Element 14 order. It's a dual pot. You've seen them before in the last mailbag. So this next one, I think this is I need to look this one up. So this is something that was sent to me by Christos, who runs a Tindy store, and this is called the SCLD, which is something that I featured in a mailbag, something I featured in a weekly roundup. And so he sent me a couple of samples, which is good. So the SCLD is a LiPo charger essentially, but this one has a fairly wide input voltage range from 5 to 45 volts. Well, it says 5 to 32 volts on the PCB, but on the Tindy store it says 5 to 45 volts. Charges up to 1 amps. And also, oh hang on, wait a second, this isn't the SCLD. Okay, so he's actually sent me two different chargers. He sent me the QC charger and the SCLD. I was going to say that the SCLD has the capability to be able to accept an input and change the illumination of LEDs based on input. So yeah, this is the SCLD. This one accepts a wide input range from 5 to 45 volts, charges your LiPo, and you can attach a little LDR if you want to, which will illuminate LEDs when the light level drops down to a certain level. And you can also replace this LDR with a motion sensor, so it will trigger based on motion as well. So I think we need to get this going. Before I do that, I need to look up and find out what this board is. Okay, so I had a quick look up on his Tindy store and I couldn't really see what this board is, so maybe it's a new board that he's developed. I don't know. I'll have to send him an email and see what that board is, but it looks like a charger. It's got a LiPo charging IC on it, so yeah, it's probably just a LiPo charger. So let's fire this one up and see what we can do with it. Actually, I've got a better idea. I'm going to wait until I open the last package to fire this up, because that last package will help me incredibly. Okay, so next package. So I got a bunch of the new NanoPi boards from FriendlyElec. I got the NanoPi K1 Plus. I also got the NanoPi M4. What else did I get? I know I've got something else. Or maybe it's in this one. The NanoPis T4. And also a couple of other bits like eMMC modules. What else? Plastic case. Something else that I don't know what I ordered. I still seem to always get these plugs. Doesn't matter who I order them from, I always end up getting these plugs. It's just a fact of life, living down under. So, the NanoPis T4. That's a little beauty, isn't it? So the NanoPis T4 is yet another board that has the Hexacore RK3399 sock. This board comes with 4 gigs RAM, a whole bunch of stuff: HDMI, EDP, USB 3.0, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Gigabit Ethernet. It's got 2 MIPI CSI and also DSI. It's got a standard Pi GPIO header. It's got SD. Did I mention Wi-Fi? Yeah, it's got Wi-Fi on it. It's got a USB Type-C, which is really nice, and also a DC jack. So they're getting rid of those dodgy micro USB ports, which are so flaky. RTC as well, battery backed up, and it's also got a full M2 key slot, which is nice. Excellent, that's really nice. Can't wait to try this out. They've got some nice screw holes for a proper heatsink on the top, but I can imagine once you have that heatsink on top, things will get a little bit tight and accessing these GPIOs might be a bit of an issue. It'd be good to give this one a whirl. The next one is the NanoPi M4. So this is another RK3399 board, but it's in a Pi form factor, which is really good. It comes in 2 or 4 gig RAM options. It has pretty much the same lineup as the NanoPis T4, but of course minus the M2 slot and a couple of other things. But they do break out the PCIe port onto headers, so if you really do want to make use of the PCIe extension, you can actually still do it. So yeah, it's missing MIPI DSI, I think. It's still got the EMC USB Type-C, so it's really nice ditching the micro USB port in favor of the USB Type-C, which is good. It also provides data as well out. The best part of this board is the sock is underneath, so it greatly improves the heatsink mounting options. A lot of the boards have the sock on top, and it means that once you've got the heatsink on there and a fan, it's hard to get to some of these GPIOs and some of the sort of headers. So this is a really good move, having the sock underneath. So fantastic idea, and all those SBC manufacturers out there who will be watching this video, please do that. Mount your socks underneath. There's no need to mount it on top. Mount it underneath, and greatly improves the heatsink mounting options. It is a Pi form factor, so it's identical, and they've done a good job of marrying up this USB Type-C to the micro USB on the Pi, but this may actually cause some issues with some cases, so you might have to grind out some cases. Let's try the official Raspberry Pi case. Of course, it's going to mount in okay. This is where the issue may occur. No, it's sort of a bit hard to access. You can just see it there. The USB Type-C lines up okay. You can actually still get into the USB Type-C, but the issue is because the sock is placed underneath, it raises up the board too much for it to actually lie completely flat. And not only that, I think they're using a different header. Yeah, so the SD slot is a slightly different profile, which is slightly wider and slightly thicker. It's just enough for the board to sit up too much. Doesn't quite lie flat. Bit of a bugger. But anyway, this type of sock, you don't really want to be putting this into a case like this without any heatsink on it. It would overheat pretty quickly and start throttling. But still, good, fantastic upgrade if you want to go to a decent sock compared to the old Raspberry Pi. Okay, let's move on. Next is the NanoPi K1 Plus. So the NanoPi K1 Plus, same form factor as a Raspberry Pi. You can see it's running the All-Winner H5 sock, so we've seen this sock on a number of SBCs. This version's got the eMMC slot, 2 gigs RAM, gigabit Ethernet. It's running the RTL8211, and there's also eMMC and SD slot, and also Pi header. You know, it's the same form factor. Unfortunately, it's using a micro USB port for power, which is a real bugger, but you know, hey, let's see if it fits in properly, because I noticed they're using the same SD slot as on the other SBC. So the SD slot that they're using lifts the board up just a fraction, just enough for it to be a bit of a pest. Not a huge amount. Actually, that's probably okay. That's not so much of an issue. It mattered a lot more with the previous board because the sock was underneath and lifting things up. So that's another board from FriendlyElec, which I need to test out. So I got a couple of other things from FriendlyElec. I think these are just all, yeah, heat sinks. I got a USB to UART. Thought I'd just give that a try. A couple of eMMC modules, which I needed to try out. Adapter, more EMC, oh, another one. and heatsink. So that's good. I got those as well. I thought I did actually order a proper heatsink for the NanoPis CT4, but I don't think I did. Okay. That's a bit of a shame. I did order a case. So one of these SBCs I'll have in a review this weekend, which would be good. I haven't actually looked at which one I'll be reviewing, but I'll be starting that today, and you'll see it in the weekend. So let's move on to the next thing, which I've been waiting for a couple of weeks. Now this is the next package. Now I went to Dave Jones's meetup the other day, and I did actually put my name in the raffle. He had several items up on the raffle, and this is one of them, and I won it. This is actually really good because my crappy old Digitech DSO, there's something really wrong with it. So I'm essentially without an oscilloscope. So this is absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to get into this. Ooh, power cord. Must be a power cord. I think KeySight's marketing strategy is pretty good. What do they say? Ditch the toys, get real test equipment. It is actually a major step up from what I have already. Now, if you've seen Dave's channel, you would have seen him completely pull it apart. And in fact, there's a hack for it, which converts it from 100 megahertz to a 200 megahertz DSO. I think I will do that, but I won't do it now. I think I need to bed this DSO down a bit more, get used to it, and then I'll start hacking it. Let's test out the SCLD, which was sent to me by Christos. Wow, takes a while to boot up. Pretty sure this runs Windows. Oh well. Could be worse. Nice. Just love it. Yeah, as Dave mentioned, all the knobs are pretty good. I'm not even going to bother reviewing this because Dave's done a much better job than I ever will. So I'll need to test out Christos's board. So I've just been playing around with it. The training signals are fantastic. You've got FM burst, RF burst, a whole lot of sort of weird things that might occur, sine with glitch, sine with noise, repetitive pulses with ringing, fast Fourier transforms. That's just pretty amazing for, like, this Crow is expensive for the home hobbyist, but for what it does, it's actually bang for your buck is pretty good. I'm pretty impressed with this, and I haven't even gotten into half of it yet. The only annoying thing is the fan, which you can hear. That's going to be a real bugger for when I'm doing recording. So what I might do is end up replacing the fan with something that's a whole lot quieter. Anyway, on to testing this SCLD. Oh, this is so cool. I have a frequency response analysis. Oh man, this is so fantastic. So let's try out one of these massive LED panels from a previous mailbag. So I managed to pick up from a dumpster dive a fairly large solar panel. It's pretty massive, and I've just sort of wired up a connection with an easy disconnect. So I'll wire it up and see how it goes. Excellent, that should do well. Okay, let's plug it in. So for some reason this Uber solar panel is completely dead. Don't know why. Which is probably the reason why it was put into a dumpster. That's a bugger. It was a nice big solar panel too. Alright, I have to try something smaller then. So this is a solar panel that I got from my letterbox. I've been upgrading my MQTT letterbox, so this is the solar panel that came out of that one. So let's add this one instead. So let's see what output we get from this solar panel just under my studio lights. If I can get in there. So I'm getting about 9 volts, pretty decent. So I put a 2.5 amp hour LiPo on this. Let's plug it in and see what happens. Okay, so the charge light's not going. Let's have a little bit more light. Okay, there we go. Charge light's lit up. Yeah, 4.15 volts. So I know that this LiPo is charged. So let's add the light dependent resistor and see if it can power up these lights. Fire this up again. Yeah, there's supposed to be a little sensitivity knob on this thing, which sets the light sensitivity. So Doofus here suddenly realised that these are actually 12 volt LEDs. Of course they won't power up. We're only getting 5 volts out, so let's find another bunch of LEDs. So probing around with my new KeySight, I should be able to see a frequency 180 kilohertz on this side of the buck converter. That's probably about right, but let me just check to see if that's what I should be getting. So just looking up the data sheet of this DC buck converter, it's pushing out 180 kilohertz on the PCB, but the maximum for this particular buck converter is 170 kilohertz. So that would be due to tolerances, but it's certainly being driven a little bit on the high side, and I'd probably want to either get a different inductor or different resistor values just to pull it down to within spec on this board. But you know, apart from that, it's a pretty decent board. It's got a fair bit of ringing. I'm guessing that's probably due to the fact that it's going beyond its maximum rated frequency. You could probably deal with that with a snubber circuit, which you can do on DC buck converters, but I think bringing that maximum frequency down to within threshold is probably a good idea. Anyway, thanks for that, Christos. That's really good board. You can pick that up on Tindy. He's sold a fair amount of them, and he's got a whole lot of other products up there as well. So yeah, go and check it out. And yeah, you gotta love this KeySight DSO. It's absolutely fabulous. It's quite good that I picked it up because I've been looking for one to replace my old Digitech Crow, which is really, it's not that good. So exporting data to USB is going to be absolutely fantastic for my videos. I'll be able to export data and flash it up on the screen, which should be nice. I might also get the I2C and UART decoder for this as well. I'll just see how much it costs. I think it might be fairly expensive, but if it's too expensive, I'll just keep going with my old cheap Chinese logic analyzers. So now that I've got a decent DSO, I can start to confirm whether my PiProjector design is actually adequate or not. So unfortunately, I won't be able to pick up a lot of the really high frequency signals. For example, the horizontal sync, I'll definitely be able to pick up, which is that one. But the vertical sync, definitely won't be able to pick it up with this DSO because it just doesn't have enough bandwidth. Can't really confirm if there's too much ringing or not with that. So I'm getting roughly 35 kilohertz on the horizontal sync, which is to be expected. And switch over to the vertical sync. Yeah, so you can see I've reached the limit of the DSO's bandwidth. I'm not getting a nice response out of that at all. But I can certainly measure the frequency to be 30 megahertz, which is what we should be seeing. And let's just probe around some of these other signals. They're extremely, they're fairly clear, the signals, but I can now save it to USB, which is fantastic. For example, some of these signals like this one, the bandwidth of the scope is just not adequate enough to pick up that. For example, this signal here is a pretty tight sort of 91 nanoseconds, so the scope definitely won't be able to keep up with this. But for the longer sort of duration signals, I'm not seeing much noise out of it. not as much ringing. It's a pretty steady signal, but admittedly we're not really getting up to the gigahertz frequencies. It's still megahertz, but overall it's a fairly clean signal, which is what I was expecting. Nice. Run with it. So while I was editing, this came in from Element 14, and these are the parts that will be used in the first batch of 20 PiProjector boards that I've made. Okay, so we've got thermistor, which is to be used for detecting the LiPo battery temperature. 1K resistor, pull up on the LED. 100K for the buck converters, 100 nanofarad for the ITC, JST connector for LiPo. DC jacks, excellent. I know there's a world shortage on MLC capacitors at the moment, and it was actually very difficult to find some of these caps. I managed to find 100 nanofarad, which is good, but a lot of these other caps that I desperately need, for example 100 microfarad, I just can't find anywhere. So unfortunately there's just a real shortage at the moment. Hopefully that will be resolved by the time I get to sell my PiProjectors. I'm actually going to be putting up the PiProjector as a crowd supply campaign, and with the shipping hopefully to be before Christmas. Got the design, I've got the prototype. All I have to do now is find suppliers. Hopefully I can find some MLC caps. I've also contacted a box manufacturer or enclosure manufacturer. So hopefully I have some nice cases made for the PiProjector as well, which are proper injected molded cases. And also there's going to be another daughter board coming out with, which I'm keeping under wraps at the moment, but it'll make things a whole lot easier for other SBCs. So you'll be able to attach any SBC up to it. Stay tuned for the crowd supply campaign coming up soon. I just got to crunch the numbers and make sure that I'm not going to do this at a loss, which is important. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you next week.